Over the past 6 months since I've last reviewed an episode from this show, I've nearly watched all the episodes up until this point. For me personally, I was either picking this episode or the previous episode or Marcy at the Gates to make a review as part of Summerpalooza 3. But on the other hand, this episode really made me appreciate the development between the characters, not to mention that even though that this is the first time I'm talking about Marcy and the fact that I'm not going to be talking about her debut episode anytime soon, her development in this episode made me appreciate her more as a character compared to what she did in Marcy at the Gates. The episode begins right after the rain, while Anne and Hop Hop are having a difficult time to get along after a whole misunderstanding happened. Let me just say that I was originally going to discuss how much the development between these two have grown since after the rain, but on the other hand, I think of what this episode does is just give more growth between the relationship between Hop Hop and Anne, but I'm gonna get to that later. Marcy arrives and tells the people the information on where they need to go to the first temple. And let me tell you that this episode has a good beginning on how these characters need to go through so many obstacles in the first temple. Not to mention they had to go through the second and third temple afterwards. And considering this is the second or third time that Marcy has a major wall, let's just say that she's easily distracted. Not to mention Nintendo Switch reference there. Let me tell you, with this episode being 22 minutes, this episode does something a lot more better than Marcy at the Gates, that they can actually give Marcy a little bit more development while also just understanding of how serious this whole thing is. I mean, in the first season, she wasn't part of it, but when you completely look at the other characters like Anne and her family, well, not technically her family, but her adopted family, there was really nothing to worry about other than the final episode of that season. And then when they move into Newtopia and they had to figure out some tips and ideas in order to find some other ways to get back home, they're really dealing with a lot of situations that in this world is just way more dysfunctional than the world that they are in. Granted, this entire world isn't 100% dysfunctional, but the obstacles that they have to come across will actually show the true nature of the world of Amphibia. When they entered inside the temple, they had to go through 3 phases. The first phase is involving Marcy doing a jigsaw puzzle, which I have to admit, that's actually kind of a good way to make this temple a lot more different. Granted, I didn't watch the next 2 episodes involving the temples by the time of this recording, but at the same time, this episode is probably the most unique when it comes to temple designs. The second phase involves colored tiles while they have to press the right button, otherwise they will be dead, which I have to admit, I actually kind of enjoy these types of puzzles so much to the point that it just makes this entire temple really unique in its own way. And as for the third and final phase, involves Marcy playing a board game while Hop Hop, Polly, Sprig are gonna be at her side while Anne is on the opposite side. Yeah, I gotta say, for how much I've seen this bit before when it comes to characters being in the board game while the player is doing the simulations, this is actually probably the best bit in the entire episode, and that is saying a lot when compared to the final 2 phases that I've mentioned. After binge watching the first season up to this episode, once I got into the second season, this show got a lot more serious when it comes to the relationships towards the other characters, mainly Anne and Hop Hop. I mean, if it wasn't for the previous episode not happening, this episode wouldn't be as much entertaining or probably more heartwarming that I give it a credit for. Hop Hop did what he could in order to protect Spike and Polly after their parents got killed. And considering that Anne is just really not the type of person who is like Spike and Polly, Hop Hop did what he could in order to do the right thing in order to make sure that Anne doesn't get killed. And considering that she's from a different world and not from the Amphibia world, I can easily admire what Hop Hop is trying to do. And as for Anne, it's really obvious that in the series finale, she, Marcy, and Sasha are gonna be heading home and saying a farewell to Hop Hop and the others. And considering that her motivation at the moment is just to wait in order to get some information from Marcy and the others about how to go to the 3 temples and gain the gems in order to get back home, is literally all she has. But considering that Hop Pop was lying to her the entire time, her motivations in the last episode is totally justified. And Hop Pop's motivation in this episode is to make sure that he can do the right thing as long as it pleases Anne, just like he did the same for Sprig and Polly, even though that he bringing up the whole parents thing at the previous episode. For me personally, I'm pretty sure that if we don't get an arc like this, then I'm pretty sure that Hop Pop wouldn't have a purpose, and he will probably take care of Polly while Sprig is just with Anne and Marcy during the entire journey. Because I'm pretty sure that if you just make Hop Pop and Polly mostly useless in this entire show, mainly after the first season, I'm pretty sure that the motivations after they return home from Newtopia will probably be a huge missed opportunity, and I'm really thankful that they didn't take that route. I consider Marcy in this episode not really a plot device whatsoever, since she gets development towards the end after everything that she put her friends into. Considering that she's a huge gaming person, it's really obvious that she will probably do anything she can to simulate the games that she played into the real world, but little does she know that this isn't a video game, and considering that she's dealing with a serious situation in order to get back home, I'm pretty sure that her obliviousness and her addiction to video games is what causes her friends to get nearly killed. Granted, these types of characters can easily be unlikable, but the thing with Marcy is literally the only closest friend that Anne has, while Sasha is the manipulative friend. So I'm pretty sure that if Marcy wasn't part of this, then Anne doesn't have anything to go with other than just being with Pop Pop, Polly, and Sprig for the entire time. Granted, they are contributors for helping her out to get to Newtopia and stuff, but on the other hand, without Marcy, they won't be able to get into the temple along with the next 2 temples in the future of the 2nd season. And during the 3rd phase, while she's playing the board game, we get this heartwarming scene between Anne and Hop Pop. Let me just say that without this scene, Marcy will probably be way more unlikable if she actually did the deed. She decides to forfeit in order to save Pop Pop's life, and the fact that Anne needs a lot more time in order to sort this whole thing out with herself, it actually helps Marcy's development as well, just like how it improves Anne's development between the other characters. And what makes this scene even more better is that even when Marcy forfeits, she can't stop the game by herself, so that she needs to find a way in order to stop the other monsters or board people in order to stop this entire board game once and for all. But that also leads to them not being able to get the gem for the ticket way home. And with the addition of her being intelligent with this type of stuff, she thought that she can carry the entire group on her back, but apparently she couldn't for how things turn out with the 3rd phase. Let me tell you that I really appreciate this character since that she is mostly the complete opposite of Sasha. I know I didn't talk about Sasha yet, but once I get to her, you will probably look forward to me talking about what I don't like about her character. Because as far as I'm concerned, just by seeing a few clips and screenshots of the episodes after this, I'm pretty sure that her character didn't improve whatsoever, and I honestly don't know how Anne and Marcy are gonna take her back to the real world where they belong. But when they left the temple, they noticed that those arrows pointing at the outhouse that they went through in the beginning of the episode, and when they go inside, the reason why they go through the temple is to test their humility, and this allowed Marcy to place the stone onto the pedestal, which regains its energy, and it points to the next temple, which is their next destination in order to go through another outrageous adventure, just like they went through. Granted, those 2 temple episodes are going to be a lot more unpredictable than this episode, since that they're going to be 11 minutes shorter than this, but on the other hand, this episode really did a good job into showing these characters about humility. Let me just say that this episode just really shows that this show just gets a lot more better and better as each episode comes out. Granted, there's at least one bad episode, but on the other hand, not every other cartoon is bad episode free, so I can easily forgive that. All I can say is that even though that the third season might probably be the final season when it comes to the Wyo and Kureo's choices of the production of these shows, I am still going to be looking forward to what they have in store. And the best thing is that I'm only up to this episode, and I have to watch the rest of the second season in order to catch on. I really consider this probably one of the best shows from Disney Channel at the moment. And considering that the end of the episode just shows that the antagonist throughout this entire show is just going to do a very disastrous plan, I'm pretty sure that the main characters are just not going to be up for a challenge against the antagonist for what they have in store against them. But at the same time, I don't review all the episodes, and at the same time, it's going to take time for me to actually get into almost all the characters from the show. Because as of right now, I'm reviewing this as part of Summerpalooza 3, and as for the future, well, only time will tell. I give this episode an 8.5 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole